All right, Steve, welcome to the Golf Coach Podcast, mate. How you going, brother?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Mate, thanks for coming on. I'm excited to have you on. I saw that you had the move to Asia and you got some educational stuff coming on, and we have a really big coach audience here. You know, I've had a coach every DM me every day for the last 8 days straight. I'm on a run for people that listen to the podcast, so no better person to have on than you. But mate, what's been going on? How's Thailand? How long have you been there for now?
Yeah, so now a couple of months into month 3. I was a self-employed coach in the UK doing my own thing, obviously specialisation, ground reaction forces, and then came out, did some work out in Thailand last November with your good friend Steve Giuliano, made some contacts, which then opened up some opportunities. Went to a couple of different schools. They're very big into their golf programs inside of these schools, these secondary schools, amongst their educational programs. And this opportunity that came around in April, a job offer was made. So I was offered a job here. So some circumstances changed and opened up some opportunities for me. So I packed my bags and boxes, stuck them on a boat, and then got myself on a plane and got myself over here and found a house, and that's it. That made my camp here. So new life is in Thailand, and I now work as head of speed and power development for the kids here at the American School at Bangkok. So and I do a bit of biomechanics work with 3D gears as well.
What's the lifestyle difference, you know, apart from golf, the difference between living in the UK and Thailand, right? Big difference.
You can see the fan up there. That's 24 hours, and the aircon unit over there. Apart from sweating heaps every day, I mean, the temperatures obviously are totally different to what I'm used to in the UK, and what we get used to over that way. Cost of living totally different. The land of smiles. People always seem to be very happy. I mean, it's just different, and coaches are a little bit different here. There's a big growth mindset. They love education. We've had a little chat about this, and as you said, they've got a hunger for it, so they're really involved in their education, further education, their own personal development, which I really like. And the kids are very much that way as well, especially the kids I know we've got 70 plus kids in our program that come daily to the school program. And they're just really into it. It's not just Thai kids. We've got kids from Korea, Vietnam, Philippines, different areas of Malaysia. So, it's a different culture. So it's certainly something I've always enjoyed when I've come out here, and have been always received and accepted very well by the people.
Yeah. And you funny say the land of the smiles. You know, someone said to me, the closer you get to the equator, the happier the people get. Because of just... There's something around heat. Like, we've just had a big change here, right, in weather. You know, obviously, I think it's a change of seasons all around the world, right? But it's happening with us here. It's getting warmer, and you can just feel it. You can feel that people are getting happier, and it's bananas. What about what's your go-to Thai dish? What are you eating over there?
I mean, I've started to get a bit spicy. They always ask you, right, when you're in a restaurant, how much spicy? Little bit spicy. So the chili's different out here. I go out and eat chilies in the UK, and I'm buying packs of them, chopping 4 or 5 of them up, sticking in a dish. You do too here. It's twice as much as what we do out in the UK. So pad Thai is a good go-to for me. I think it's got all of the flavours, and obviously then put some shellfish in there as well. So and I'm getting into some other stuff, some other dishes as well. But my girlfriend's a very good cook, so she cooks a lot. She does a lot of Isan food, which is just a different region. So I'm not really got into I used to do a bit of curry myself in the UK, but I still bring in my Western dishes here to the kitchen. But and she's bringing her Thai dishes as well. So I have to say I like food. Probably see from the size of me, not so much here, but I like food. I enjoy food. I enjoy beer. Don't we all, right? I will eat anything that's put in front of me. So I'm usually very happy and content when there's a plate of food down. So,
alrighty, that's I like it. Oh mate, we love a good Thai dish.
Yeah,
it's not the same in the West though. When you get like your Thai food, like it's the same when you go to India and you go to get Indian. It's nothing like the Indian you have in the West. And remember before we get into actually golf talk, but I remember walking into the back of a restaurant in India once when I was there on one of my trips, and I walked in the back and there was just this wall of just, it was like, what would you call it? Like not like big amounts of spices. So not like little spices, but like big ones, because obviously it's a restaurant, right? And had this wall full of colors. I was like, wow. And he says, this is all the spices we use. He goes, in the West, you use 2. The same in every dish. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. He's like, yeah. He said, your Indian dishes in Australia, you just use 2. We use all of these. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's a lot more flavoursome.
But 100%. And I think that also adding to it, I know that this is different with different people, but even the hygiene differences, I think, even add different flavors. You know, when you got somebody that's chopping meat on a board, raw meat, and the next minute they're chopping vegetables on the same board without cleaning it, right?
Yeah.
We're scrubbing things, bleaching things, with, you know, and even from our own gut and the health of our gut, right? And this is some stuff I've started getting into recently, you know, just these bacteria that we're removing that we'd normally get in the dirt from certain things that we would do and around. We're taking them out of our system, that they're part of our system's, you know, internals and how it works. So, you know, I mean, look, I'm an ex-chef. That was what I got into when I left school. So I know hygiene and good hygiene, what we have in the UK. But it's a little bit different here. And once your body and stomach gets used to it, I think it can even become healthier because of it.
Mate, I could talk about it all day. We don't have any chemicals in the house. I tell you, if you run into someone, you want to talk about the physiological, you know, kind of impact that chemicals and stuff are having on us, talk to Dr. Mark Bull. Him and I can talk for days and days and days about it. Anyways, let's get into some ground force stuff, right? Tell me. So I ask all the guests that come on, like, give me some topics that we want to talk about. I want a subject area. You know, let's really nail something down, because as golf coaches, we're so diverse, right? As golf coaches, and you know, when someone asks me, you know, can I get a putting lesson off you? And I'm like, well, it depends on your handicap. If you're really good and you want to play golf at elite level, let's go see a specialist putting coach. But if you're just a club golfer, I can definitely take care of you, right? That's the deepest of my hearts, right? It's how I kind of feel about it. Now, when it comes to dealing with speed, right? A lot of us coaches will use specialist people, you know, outside as well, because we're so diverse as golf coaches. We're trying to cover all these complex things in the golf game. And you are an expert in ground force reaction. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep. And what technology do you use?
Okay, so I'm now using Smart to Move.
Yes.
I've gone through the ages in the last decade, over a decade now, of studying and working with golfers on their ground reaction forces, or should we say foot action forces, and then Newton's third law ground reaction forces.
Yes.
And used technology and moved through the years and the evolutions of technology.
Yeah. And when you said that you use motion to coach, is what you said, or motion to move. Did you say
Smart to Move is the force plate company that I use.
Yeah, great. And that's not just the app. That's got the mat and the floor as well, has it?
It's the physical plates. So
physical plate.
I've always been kind of a physical plate kind of guy. The reason why since the beginning we've always had, now we are predicting forces, and there's very good apps out there that do predict forces, and they're pretty close.
Yeah.
But I like the theatre of having the equipment on the ground. Somebody stands on it. I like colourful mats. I like people to know that they're standing on it, because I do think that has for them it's a big deal. And the theatre of going through, it's like going to a restaurant. We talk about food again, so I'm changing onto food. Going to a restaurant, you've got an open kitchen, a glass wall, and you see cooks, you see the chefs producing the food. There's this theatre to that, right?
Yeah,
so it's the same. They come into a golf lesson. I like putting something on them and standing on something so they know they're actually getting something. When it's just the phone just there, don't get me wrong, we've done videos since the beginning of time, but when it's predicted forces just done on a phone, I don't get quite the same reaction, no pun intended, from them as I would do when they're physically standing. Oh, these are the force plates, right? This is what you was doing on social media last week. You was moving on these. So it's a bit like, you know, they're on what you're using and what they see, the better players that you're working with and the elite players that you work with.
So you think their intent goes up a little bit when they can see it as well, potentially, when they know that they're focusing on that?
Yeah, but I've definitely, when they're standing on something, for sure, the focus goes on to that. They certainly get, I see them less technical working on P positions in the golf swing when they're standing on force plates, because they're like, oh, okay. And then they're starting to then start to push into the plates a bit differently and seeing some different things. But I think that certainly, you know, the foot's a very complex structure, right? I'm not an expert in the foot, but when we know from proprioceptors and the amount of those receptors in the foot is they're very sensitive. So, you know, when I've always done testing and looked at, you know, how I produce ground reaction forces personally, if I go barefoot, my timings are always superb. They're always bang on point, but my magnitudes, the amount, are lower than I would be when I've got a structure or something in there to push against, which would be the sole of the shoe. So my timings changed. Therefore, what's happening there, my skin and those receptors are touching the surface, and there's no interference, there's no noise, there's nothing absorbing what I can push into the gap, and then that feedback triggering my brain. So, you know, barefoot is always good, but we can't play golf barefoot. We're going to slip around all over the place because grass is a pretty slippery substance, right? So, and then sharp objects cutting our feet as well. That's why we wear shoes. So it does make a difference, and certainly I like having a piece of equipment and technology, and then also the sensitivity changes with the different technology and the direction of the forces that they measure as well.
Well, that was my next question, was how much technology out there do we have, and why smart to move?
So there's I would say there's 3, maybe 4 major players in the force plate market, right? So it's split them into, you know, their software. They have their software, and then they have their hardware. A lot of them don't produce their hardware. They source an external piece of equipment, and then their software will integrate with it. So your main software companies that integrate with hardware, you've got Smart to Move, use different hardware, external hardware, which would be Kistler. You've got Gasp that use AMTI hardware, and then you've got Swing Catalyst that use Bertect hardware, and then Motion to Coach coming in using AMTI hardware. Smart to Move also have their own production line as well. They produce their own wireless force plate. So they source a product from a company called Kistler, and then they also source their own product from their own. They have their own factory effectively where they're making their own 3D wireless plates. So they're the major players in the market. We'd probably say then second to that, then you're dropping down. There's insole companies now that are making sensors in insoles that you slide into your shoes. And then you've got Matt's technology, something like BodyTrack, which was one of the first systems that I used back in 2014. BodyTrack is like a doormat with 800 or so sensors inside it. It's material with sensors laced through the material. And the parent company of BodyTrack, actually a company called Vista Medical, they were making sensor technology. They were using sensor technology in mattresses of patients' beds in hospitals. So then they would be able to detect whether A, the patient is moving, B, how well the patient is sleeping because of the movement. So they had these sensors, and they took that material with sensors in and created a map for measuring vertical forces and pressure. And that's how BodyTrack started. So, and then Terry Hashimoto came on board as their main marketing man and the head of education. You may would have seen him or know him. I was the first to take a BodyTrack mat out of Canada. It's a Canadian product. I got a product for myself. I then distributed it in UK and Europe. So I bought a number of mats back in 2014 to start distributing them. It was a bit ahead of the curve because it didn't really kick off until probably 2015, 16. Ground reaction forces started to kick off, especially in the West. I think the East were doing it before the West, but the West really accepted it. It's a bit like the TrackMan thing. You know, we're always a bit behind, but they accepted it, and then we started to sell a lot of them. BodyTrack was good because it was portable. So effectively a very light mat that you could roll up, slide it into a bag, carry it around. So the portability became a big thing for me and was always, you know, high on my list. I need something that's portable. And I then moved from BodyTrack onto SAM Balance, but that was a fixed plate, a 1D vertical force and pressure measuring plate. and that was fixed. So I couldn't move it around. We had it locked into the bay. Effectively, we had cut out a section for it and put it into the ground.
Yeah. Yep.
Moved from them on to gasp. Gasp was a little bit more portable, but really more of a better fixed point solution. So sat in the ground on locating bolts so it wouldn't slide, move. They're about 16, 15 kilos a piece. The AMTI plates, wow. Aluminium plates, big old plates. Yeah. And 500 by 500, they're big, right?
Yeah.
So they were where I then got most of my knowledge from and understanding, and I thank Steve Gould that kind of put me on the road of understanding 3-dimensional forces, not just 1-dimensional. Mm-hmm. So because vertical force has been pretty much on the map since the beginning. We've been measuring into the ground, lowering, rising, effectively showing us the values that help us lower and rise ourselves, or lift and drop. Yep. And then we've been measuring pressure, which is effectively vertical force, force over an area. We've been measuring the center of pressure, which is your average location of vertical force. We've been measuring that since the beginning as well. So we've always had COP terms, center of pressure, vertical force, and the ability to lift and drop. But then we moved into the other two forces as well, which were lateral forces and anterior posterior forces.
Yeah.
So, and that was my journey with GASP, and that was really what put me on the map. And I probably wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for the work that I did with GASP, my GASP plates, and the players that I worked with on tour and long drivers. To which then I did some work with the German company Fenris and Motion to Coach, helping them develop their app. And now I'm using Smart to Move product, and I switched Smart to Move purely because it's portable. The force plates are very light; they're about 7 kilos a piece, which is half the AMTI gas plates. You can set them down; they're wireless, connect to an iPad. They're just brilliant, and the app is very intuitive, very easy to use. The user interface is simple, very sweet, nice to use. And you just put your iPad on a tripod, bang on the plates, put it on record auto, and you can hit shots. And then it's visualized really well as well. So the golfer, you can show it to them and zoom in on certain positions or points of application. And it's a really good app, I have to say. And the plates you then just zip up in your bag, and I can jump on a plane with them, no problem, whether it's in the cabin or in the hold.
I love it. And that's really great. Now let's talk about, using them in coaching, right? Before I ask you some kind of technical questions. And say you're giving a golf lesson, do you use your, I know that you specialize, right? Say you're giving just a normal golf lesson, the person doesn't know that your specialty in what you do, right?
Yep.
They've just rocked up, booked a lesson, right? I don't know who you are exactly in regards to your specialty. Are you using the plates more with a certain type of golfer, from a better golfer or a high handicap golfer? Or is it evenly distributed? How much and how often do you think that should a coach be using them in a lesson?
So, due to the sort of what I'm doing now with my career and working at the American School of Bangkok at ISPGA, so the difference obviously with the IPGA kids, they're elite players, right? We've got beginners, but they're elite improvers and elite players. So when I've got a complete beginner, which was some of the work that I used to do in the UK, my website I wouldn't turn people away if they're complete beginners. They're not on force plates, it's the grip alignment, stance, posture stuff, right? I might put a bit of video on them and show them a golf swing, give them a concept, give them a shape, give them some idea of what the club is doing around with a good player and how they're moving it around their body. And then, with basic fundamentals. However, when we move into somebody that's serious about improving their golf, that wants to make a motion change, that understands change in motion, force precedes motion. So the golfer's got internal force that they can create through muscle, and the golfer's then got the ground that they can push against to help them move. So yes, we can activate muscles, we can move arms, we can bend elbows, we can, put the club on plane, right? Put it in and get it working how they want it to work, change their ball flight. But also, if we're going to move the body, and we take the pelvis being a very, very important segment, which all good players move well, we take the pelvis if we've got the muscular force around the pelvis to gear it and move it, but also the ground is an extremely important part in the movement of the pelvis. Yep. So when it's an intermediate player into an elite player, the ground reaction the force plates are live. They're always capturing. I do a basic screening of the three forces that help linear motion. So sway, lift, thrust. Are we swaying the pelvis into position? Are we swaying too much? Do we need to center it? Do we need to stack? Yeah. Do we need to take the upper over the lower? You know the stuff. So I'm using the lateral forces to use sway. If a player's excessively thrusting, everybody thrusts, by the way, but it's the amount and when we do it. If we're doing extreme amounts of thrusting, we're then doing some funky things to the club and the plane of the club coming down. Thrust is AP force. So when somebody's pushing towards the golf ball and away from the golf ball, the reactions, that aids thrust. So if thrust is excessive, I'm looking at AP forces. If they're like me, staying down a bit too long, legs buckle a bit through impact, body starts to tilt, then I'm looking at vertical forces. Are those vertical forces allowing pelvis rise and then aiding tilts? So all of these three forces that I've talked about, the lateral, the AP, anterior posterior forces, and the vertical forces, aid linear motion. So I look at them and screen them and come back to them with that.
How often do you get surprised when you look at a pattern? Say you're looking at a ground force pattern and you're looking at the video, right? And which most coaches are just using a video, right, to kind of see what's going on. Are you often getting surprised? Are you seeing stuff that you are not picking up through the video in regards to it?
Now, not so much. Before, yes. So when I first got the plates, it was always like I'd look at P4, look at top of backswing, and wonder why players getting into this contorted position, this weird and wonderful position. But now, obviously, understanding ground reaction forces, force precedes motion. So I'm a P2, P3 guy to effect 4. So I'd go back to 2 and I'd be looking at what's happening around 2 and 3. Yeah. So then this excessive sway that this, Mr. Havacam is doing, hopefully we haven't got a Mr. Havacam watching, but if we got a Mr. Havacam, which is swaying as much as Martin Borgmeier, by the way, center of mass way, so they're swaying off, but theirs is prolonged, so they continue to sway all the way to 4. Why? It's not a force acting against them to push them in the other direction. Martin Borgmeier sways the amount, but he's done by P1.5. Club is just moving away from the golf ball. Sway is done away from the target. Lateral forces are beginning to ramp up. So he's then affecting time because he's got lateral force moving him towards the target, kicking in early, and then he hits his peak early. So, and then by the top of the backswing, he's recentered, and then he's falling into his lead side. Mr. Havacam's got to reorganize things. He's all the way over here, and in 1/3 of a second, he's got to get across, get around, and deliver the club into the back of the golf ball.
But that's a great subject. Let's just talk about that, right? So obviously, well, not obviously, so but we know with long drivers, right, that they're coming back a lot quicker, right? Like you say, P1.5. I always was just said P2, like Seb Twiddell, Craig, recent guy on the podcast. Craig Parker, and I've had Lee Cox on as well, right? But talking about that kind of speed as well. So if you haven't listened to a long drive coach as well, you can go listen to that one. All right, so it's going to bring us to the Back to Basics putting segment here. Supporters of the podcast, support those who support the podcast. Use code TM15 for 15% off the best putting mirror you can get. The ProPath putting mirror, designed by Grant Field, Richard Woodhouse, used by Cam Smith and many, many, many golf pros all around the world. 15% off, use code TM15. Link is below. Thanks to everyone who is purchasing them. Do you use a putting mirror, Steve? And do you have a putting tip in the Back to Basics putting tip here? It doesn't need to be involving the mirror, the tip, but firstly, do you use a mirror?
I've got a Back to Basics mirror.
Oh,
I didn't tell you this beforehand, but I do have one. It's reversible. It's robust. I like it because of its shapes and weight. It's much more holds its structure much better. Yes, love it. Use it all the time. And a drill that I would use as something that the player can use. Obviously, you've got the T spaces for length of stroke. I use if ever I get them on the mirror to start with their eye lines and postural lines, making sure their eyes are over where they need to because their spine shape is allowing that to sit level.
Yeah.
And they're not leaning, doing these all sorts of funky stuff that you see some recreational golfers try to putt like, or over there, lining them up, etc. I like length of stroke and the balance of the length of stroke, because I see a lot of short to long strokes, which from an acceleration profile, I'm a cap-toe man, seeing these kind of big accelerations through impact, and they're wondering why they can't judge speed. So I would use a sleeve of golf balls if you've not got a mirror, but a sleeve of golf balls to the side, to the right of the ball, a sleeve of the golf balls to the left of the ball, put 2 tees in the ground and make sure your stroke is balanced and measure how far that goes. And then you've got that distance to work with all day.
Love that. You and Jake Firm are good friends, I think, because he's very similar. And I think I was talking to Jake about this yesterday, or on the previous episode, that I think it's one of the last big misconceptions that I can remember that I've been told. You know what I mean? Like it's as we've gone through technology that's told us all this, that's the last one I've kind of think that I've been, oh shit, I didn't know that. You know, it's some time ago now, obviously, but that's been brought to us. So I like that. So just using some golf ball boxes there to help you with stroke length. That's
stroke length either side of the ball. So then we're getting a good balance. And I think we've seen over the years the best players in the world have a well-balanced stroke either side of the ball. If not, the forward stroke a fraction shorter than the backstroke.
Yeah. Yes. No, I agree. Well, that brings us to the end of the Back to Basics putting segment. Support us. We appreciate them a lot. They've been great. It's obviously been great to all the golf pros, because there's not many coaches that don't use one of these mirrors. And if you haven't got one yourself, you're crazy. Tag us in them. Tag us in you using the mirror if you've got it. Support the podcast. TM15, 15% off. Okay, let's talk about that subject area there, right, about Mr. Havercam, who's swaying a lot. Now, a lot of golf coaches, you know, and even myself included, I would say you need to stay more centered, Mr. Havercam, right? Now, I'm assuming that you're not going to be using that potential. You're going to be kind of explaining to them that they need to be applying force through their trail foot to help them stay centered. So we're not just saying stay centered. We're telling them where to apply force. So we're not negating the lateral and trying to get them to stack on the lead side. We're just simply showing them by this X amount of time, you need to start pushing this way. Is that some of the language that we need to start be using, right?
I mean, it works both ways, Toby, because you telling them to stay stable, they've got to be pushing underneath their trail foot to stay stable. Because the reason why they're swaying is that there's little force and late force underneath their trail foot. So again, it's the terminology. You say that, they then apply force to the ground. They have a foot action force in a direction away from the target and a reaction away. So they do it. So the terminology is not wrong. It's absolutely bang on point. I just say it, well, I'll give them a force pedal and stick it underneath their trail foot and then apply it, put that on the balls of their foot. So I'm going to put it to actual points of application. Put it on the balls of their foot and say, I just want you to push a bit harder that way for me, because you're just not pushing early enough. Let's get it on time. Let's get it, and I'll stick the shaft at P2. Say, right at that point, I want a good amount of force that way for me, and then I know that P4 they're going to be back on it again. So they'll be centered, recentering the pelvis.
What are some common issues you see? Like, is there patterns you see? Like, obviously, we talk about golf coaching. You know, we see patterns, right? And a pattern of events that creates a certain ball flight or swing style or swing look, whatever you want to call it. Are you seeing the same stuff in the ground? Are you seeing common issues in the ground? So if you see a certain swing, are you seeing very consistently the same pattern on the floor?
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting.
So I talked about the linear motions. So we got sway, side to side, to and away from the target. We've got thrust, to and away from the golf ball, forwards and backwards. And then we've got lift. So the first two are the big ones. You know, recreational golfers are struggling with their timings of sway and thrust. Okay. And then it would be then the reasons why is effectively the ground reaction forces are late. So never really the amounts are massively a problem. They're swaying enough. They're just doing it really late or prolonged. Or thrust is excessive. The reason why it's excessive is they're getting a ground reaction force from one of their foot, which isn't the couple that they need to actually get the lead side to thrust their body backwards.
Yeah.
So, and that's another subject of conversation we can have about what a couple is and how the body needs to rotate. We've got duo of forces acting there, like shearing forces that are helping the body rotate. Okay. And a thruster, an excessive thruster, is only really tapping into one of those forces. They've not got that duo or couple.
Yeah.
So that would move the trail side excessively forwards because the lead side has no energy to move it backwards and away from the ball. So that merry-go-round roundabout is only being powered by one of the pairs. If little Tommy is sitting on the roundabout and just mummy's there pushing the roundabout, which is the trail foot pushing, the roundabout forwards towards the horizon. They've not got daddy's not there because he's at work. He's not pushing from the other side back towards mummy's direction away from. So then you've got that, and it's you just opened a bottle of drink there. If I open a bottle of drink, I've got my two fingers. I'm not just trying to use one finger and push in one direction. I've got that couple of two fingers to push and pull. So there's that reaction of ground reaction forces that we need both feet. And golfers do struggle with AP forces, that toe to heel force underneath their lead foot. That's a big problem I see.
Under that lead foot, that force there. Okay, that's interesting. That's very.
So then when we go back to the amount of time that they spend on their lead foot, they're not on that lead foot early enough, and then they're not, so then that's time-ins, and then they're not applying the forces, enough of the forces down, forwards and outwards. It's a three-dimensional force, which then creates that linear plus angular motion up through the body and allows the segments to move that way. So they're not on the lead foot early enough.
They just haven't got the time. They haven't got the time because they're running so late. That's so interesting. That is very interesting. Because I just was having a conversation with a student on Zoom yesterday, and I said to him, like, what do you need? What do you need? And like, as I ask every lesson, right? What do you need from me? He's a golf pro, and he's like, I need my lead side to get more open, not so much in the feet. I was like, okay, you want your lead side more open. And every language and everything he was talking was right-handed golfer was left side, right? So he was like rib cage, shoulder. He was like everything, hip, boom, boom, boom. And I said to him, have you ever thought about the right side? And he's like, no, I haven't. I thought, well, how about we put force in the right side going that way, out to the ball, and then you can actually get the left side going this way. And I wasn't really talking so much on the ground. It was more just as the whole.
Yep.
And he hit two shots and went, fuck, that's it, straight away. And I thought, well, it's interesting because I was just listening to him. He's all left side, left side, left side, left side. And that's interesting that you're talking about that, right? It's very important that you, what's the word you used? Duo? Was that what you used?
Yeah, couple. Force couple.
Sorry, couple. Yeah. No, I love that. That's really, really cool. Hey, can you tell me, right, I've got so many questions here. I've got something that kind of relates to this. Okay, let's actually go to this question here. That was great. I love that. What can you explain to us some key differences you see between driver and iron? Between like elite, we're talking about good case studies here. Is there?
So if I was to take, obviously I've been fortunate with the drivers that I've worked with at the golf ball, from recreational golfers up to long drivers, right? And their driver's a lot harder to wield than the tour players or the recreational golfer's driver because it's longer, less lofted.
Let's talk about a tour pros driver. Let's not use tour
pros driver. So, okay, the magnitudes generally are a bit higher. Because of the lever, effectively the speed they're trying to get into the club. Because of the plane of the swing as well. So the way the golfer is obviously setting up, they're tilting differently. So if we're affecting tilts, we need forces to affect tilts. That's the angular motion in the body. Because we're trying to launch drive, we are trying to optimize the delivery of the club, and we're trying to catch the ball on the up some. We know that has an inward motion travel in the resultant path of the club. So if we're trying to zero out the resultant path, we need to shift the swing direction a little bit out to the right to match up the up, right?
Yeah.
So that would be a tilt thing. So generally, what the golfer is trying to do more with driver is trying to apply tilts into the golf swing to affect some upward attack angle.
Yeah.
The iron is more of a turn thing. So the golfer is the swing direction with the downward attack is somewhat, again, it's enough to neutralize the club, or it's got a path that goes out to the right because they're generally 4-6 down, right?
Yeah.
So that's affecting the resultant path. If they want to zero out the path, they're going to swing it left. So we're seeing obviously these handle motions with the iron much more left, and we're seeing these handle motions with the driver much more right. So subject to how much they're trying to hit up on it or down on it. So tilts and turns. Driver, really we want to push into the ground at the right time that allows us to rotate about our center of mass to tilt. Irons, muted more in the tilts, but increased more in the turns. So we're looking at those AP forces that are helping us turn and rise into position post-impact.
Okay.
So they're the differences. Tilts and turns and the forces laterally in AP are different.
Okay. That's interesting. Now, can you explain the difference, right? Like, does the difference of the setup, because of potential front bend differences due to the different type of club they're using, right, and distance they are away from the ball, does that play a role as well? So, like, if someone's hitting like a wedge versus a driver, like at setup, is their weight still the same on the ground and the pressure?
So if we was to move through the clubs, there would be, so we talk about pressure or weight, pressure being the force over an area. So we're talking about vertical forces, pressure. Weight is different. If we refer to weight, let's call it center of mass, for example. So where a golfer might sit their center of mass, where they put their weight, most golfers all try to, because of the good players, because of where they need it at impact for all shots, it's just ball position changes and the plane of the swing is changing. Just because of how they're trying to hit up or down, and they're trying to move the swing direction to help match that as well, so they can get an effective ball flight that they need. Everyone starts a bit left because it's almost like a cheat code. I've got to get there. Different players, different shape sizes of golfers may well shift over to the right more than others. I'm very, very big on you speak to Mark about quite a lot. He talks about these helical angles. Sounds very complex, but it's the size of your rib cage. So if you're a John Rahm, which is a very much barrel shaped chest versus a very thin, tall chest, Justin Thomas. A barrel-chested player will lean off the ball more, so front bend, they tend to not extend up to zero. They not get out of bend that much because they're very heavy from top down. But somebody that's very thin and narrow is lighter from the top. They can stack the upper. If we was to take your sternum and your belt buckle, let's say, right? They would put the sternum over the belt buckle much easier than somebody like Rahm that tends to lean off of it a bit, or a Koepka. So looking at the shape and size of the golfer and allowing them to move freely the way that they want to because of the way they're being pulled and moving, I think that is quite important. So then if we're John Rahm, he's going to be a bit more reliant on lateral force because he needs to kind of push quite hard to get this kind of big chest over and on top of his pelvis again if he's going to hit a quality iron shot and slightly ahead of it mid-downswing. Versus JT, that's very much stacked at the top, great. He's going to then got less work to get his rib cage center over in front of his pelvis center before he backs it up on top of it again. So he's got less work to do. So he's not going to use the ground as a force, external force. He's not going to. He's not tapping into that external force, which he's got there using the ground to move laterally. So that's just a lateral example, and taking the size and shape of the golfer, how they would use the ground to move it.
It's and you obviously with JT you can even throw Scotty in there, right? Like Scheffler, like into that same category. And I think you've explained that so beautifully in regards to, I've always said that thicker chested guys, I'm like, we don't need that lead. If we can get that lead arm to shoulder plane at P4, that's good.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, that's good. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't try and get the handle up high. And it's always been kind of an unwritten rule with me, right? Like, and I've never really understood, tried to study why, I guess, in regards to why thicker guys, lead arm shorter, try to get the shaft a little shallower earlier because they haven't got much time as well. But you're saying there, because they're so heavy at the top from the chest upward, they struggle to get extension through the upper spine.
I think it's pretty tough, and it depends on how long they've been playing as well, right? So when they start to develop that shape and frame, if they were junior golfers, they wouldn't have been that big, so they probably would have been much more reversed. And I see a lot of that with weaker junior golfers. They will reverse spine and get the spine past zero, and they do that for a bit of slide of the pelvis to get that reverse pivot look, and then they're very good at getting back that way as well. That when they've obviously grown and got bigger and moved into adulthood, the frame has started to change size, and then that's probably then started to bed itself in, and then they've got very good at that point managing that, getting that back in front as much as they need to for their iron shots. Or even, if we talk Ryan Fox, right, just having a grip pattern and a match up to that, right, start getting under there, which wants you to drive the handle that way. He's matched it up really well through his own probably amazing ability as a superhuman, but some superb coaching that he's had over the years as well. So I think that the athlete, the superhuman, that are these professionals, they just start to get it and start to do it. They don't need a lot of the time us going in and saying, do this. They work it out, and then we come in and then help them and steer them and guide them in that direction.
Just an off-topic question, but when you talk about the junior rider who reverses, right, and say we want to measure, sternum, up the spine there, we have 0 degrees like a Scotty Scheffler, right, or like a JT right there, and reversing, we're tilting back this way here. Do you have like a bit of a limit on that, or do you just play it case by case? Or if you see a junior getting, too negative, because it's so difficult when you're dealing with kids without muscle mass, and it's so tough to stop them. And you just think, do you think they naturally will bring that back to 0 as they get older, or are they going to get injured and stay there? Like,
I've seen and been around, fortunately, sometimes even intervened and prevented it. I've seen some broken spines in kids where they've just repeatedly pounded, for example, their lower trail side, and they will effectively over time just start to incur a lot of wear and tear on that section, and therefore damage it, and then the break will happen. So I tend to intervene now, and I would never really like beyond 0. I would want to be on 0, and whether that's me just drawing simple lines on the screen and just saying and going over there and then pushing their pelvis back towards target and leaning their the base of their neck and separating them the other way versus where they are that way. I'd go in there and push this bit this way, and then say you need to swing a bit like Mr. Havercam at the golf club. I mean, I referenced this in a lesson last week with a 16-year-old elite player that I talked to her, and he said, let's be Mrs. Havercam for a little bit, and let's get over here a bit more, because she's excessively that way, and then slides and thrusts to even make it more, and then backs out of it and wonders why she struggles with low point with irons, because from that position it's really difficult to get the right amount of drift forwards to then get the low point where it needs to be. So she doesn't drift forwards enough, so she then just spin and then back out of it and drag the low point back, and she's lucky if she's -1 attack angle at most, generally around 0. Put her in rough, she's done, and the body's grabbing with the grass behind the ball.
The body's looking for balance too, right? Like it can't,
exactly.
You can't go lateral that way and you're tipping over. But I tell you what, I had a case study last week, or a student maybe 2 weeks ago. And I said to his dad, you got to sign him up to the program. But he came to me, this kid, and his dad goes, I said, okay, what's the problem? Hour session. What do we need to work on? What's the goals? And he said he's got a really, really long golf swing, and I just keep telling him to swing short, and he won't stop. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, kids have all got long golf swings. I kid you not, it was like -20, right? like tipping backwards.
Yeah.
And he's starting to build some muscle mass. He's like 13, 14, like still plays footy and stuff like this. And I'm watching him on the camera, and I'm just blown away. I've never seen it, right? And I was studying through it, and I said to him, "Do you ever get a sore back?" And his dad goes, yeah, he had to go for a massage yesterday because he had a sore back from golf on Saturday. I said, mate, a 14-year-old kid getting a massage from a sore back. I said, this is not a swing issue. This is a safety issue that we need to discuss right now.
Yep.
And I was like,
yep.
I'm usually pretty flexible at top of the spine with kids, but this is extreme. I said, there's no way call him 14, right? I don't know exact age, should be getting a massage from playing golf. And anyways, it's
yeah, I'm being around those age groups. It's something that was in the past happening a lot. We've actually got a full-time physio at the golf school, and I'm stepping in and saying we can prevent this. We could, if we can intervene at the right time, we can prevent this. We don't need to be on this table being rubbed down at the moment. This should have been intervened at 18 months ago, a year ago, and we don't need to get hit. Because
the back's not sore at 12. You know what I mean? Like the back's not sore at 13. The back starts getting
hypermobile.
14. Yeah.
They're hypermobile and they can extend more than you and I. I wish I could extend that much.
You should have seen it. I'll send you a photo on Instagram. It was unbelievable. They're like
pretzels, right? I mean, they just get this contorted position and then into impact. Arms way behind them, mega open, like about 60 degrees with the pelvis. Chest gets open, leaning back, trying to get this behind arms back in front of them again.
Yeah.
And then they work on spin forces and those forces that help them spin open a lot. So we then see some quite radical leg work to power the body to open up that much.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And this is why, like, Scotty's pelvis moves, like his feet move, right? Because he's trying to get that pelvis back underneath him, right? And go forward. Because it's so far this way, he's trying to get it back underneath him. And I'm not saying why it slides, but it definitely caters to him, right? If John Rahm tried to move his feet that way, he'd hit 4 inches behind the ball.
He would do, exactly. Ryan Fox the same, right?
Yeah,
so, this is back to now we're now seeing the generation that's come through, come forward from the technology and use of technology and even ground reaction forces, because I used to move my feet around like Scotty Scheffler when I was a kid. I didn't have a lot of lessons when I started, so obviously learned to use the ground myself. But far before all of this stuff, and we did right when we look at legendary players and their footwork with the lift in their lead heel being an example. Not necessarily jumping around as much, but I was told one of my first lessons with a pro was quiet feet work a treat. Not allowed to move your feet. Got to keep your feet on the ground. And that was one of the reasons that stuck in my mind for a long time as an amateur golfer into my professional years, to a point that when I then I found Lee Cox. He's one of my best friends now. I found Lee Cox online for a forum because he had posted some stuff about Joe Miller, who had just won at that point, and Joey had taught as a junior golfer into a champion world long driver, multiple champion world long driver, and I was fascinated at the footwork of Joe Miller. It was like, my God, I used to, I was told not to move around like that, but he's hitting the ball miles.
Yeah.
I went and met him and measured him. These guys are scarily big, by the way.
Aren't they?
And they're like human refrigerators. Oh my good God, look at you. Just the big people, right?
Yeah.
So they have the mass rule and advantage more than you and I together.
Oh yeah, of course.
And looking at Joe, measuring him, he had trainers on. Why he got trainers on? Well, spikes hurt my knees. That makes sense. You're stuck in the ground. When he had shoes on, when he had spikes on, he had more spikes underneath his trail foot than his lead foot, so his lead foot could jump more. Makes total sense. All of this sort of stuff. It's like, I get it, right? So Scotty's now become of this new era of leaving those feet, letting them move around and jump. Vertical force is incredibly powerful. We create over 2 times our body weight. So if we weigh 100 kilos, we're getting 200 kilos of force. That's a heck of a lot of force into the ground. Therefore, our ability to move away from the ground is huge. So the jump and pelvis rise is massive. And when it comes to speed, we can talk about speed next. When it comes to speed and the ability to move the hand path and bend the hand path up in and around to rotate the grip right at the bottom of the swing around 6 or 5.5, begin the grip rotation to slingshot the head forwards. That gets speed into the head at the right time. So vertical force is a big player on that. So that jump in from Scotty is a massive power source, and it was never taken away from him or coached out of him.
Great coaching. Great coaching.
Great coaching.
Yeah, great coaching from a point of, I'm not saying great coaching that he designed it, but as great coaches, you've got to learn to keep your mouth shut at times, right? And am I giving this person the right information? Does this person need this? And yeah, great coaching. Great coaching.
And if I asked you this question, Toby, because I'd openly admit I would have.
Yes.
If you was giving him as a young player and he was struggling with his low point, you'd be telling him to quieten his feet quite a bit to help him stabilise. Back in the day, not maybe now. If we take ourselves back to our early coaching days of what we knew,
yes, definitely,
we would have done it. Would have been a go-to, right?
I used to have a term: stop dancing around like Michael Jackson. And then when Michael Jackson wasn't relevant, I had to say stop dancing around like Justin Bieber because. So I mean, I've said it, but mate, I completely.
And he's one of the best iron players on the planet, statistically. Could be a generation anomaly in iron play because of how good he is and how accurate he is off the sacred turf.
What about, I asked Andreas Carly this, would have you changed Jordan Spieth's grip when he was going for that big slump? It's an interesting question.
Would I have changed Jordan Spieth?
Jordan Spieth's grip when he was going through that bit of a slump there. You know how he has that trail, his bottom hand thumb is kind of hanging over the side of the grip, and he has a little bit of stability at top of the backswing, you know, at P4. It doesn't really have the mass above the hands, you know, like it's not that, you know, was it affecting delivery? And Andreas was like, he sat on it for a while. I can't remember his answer. I'd have to listen to it, but yeah, it was interesting.
He's awesome, Andre, though.
I've had him on twice now.
He's great. I met him in person, worked with him, did some education with him. An incredible guy, and oh wow, he's changed some lives of some juniors golfers with what he's done with his academy. It's quite incredible. Possibly one of the best in the world currently with the churn of players he's doing.
He'll be a household name in 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
He'll be, you know, like spoken about Foley, Como. He'll be in that. He just won't be able not to be. As much as he won't want to be, but he will be.
Yeah.
Tell me, I'm going to ask you one more question before we get into our segments. And I want to kind of incorporate this. What can we do at home? Can you tell me how can coaches design some drills, or what's some drills and exercises we can do to target kind of ground force development?
Okay. First and foremost, if you haven't got them, buy some force pedals.
Force pedals. Or half a tennis ball.
So you got a tennis ball. I used to chop tennis balls up and pool noodles back in the day, but the profile of these are awesome. So you got the bigger force pedal and the smaller force pedal. So the idea being is that because of its shape, you can place it under the balls of the foot. It's just designed that way. This is the soft version. There's a harder version, which is the yellow. And place them under the balls of your feet. Whether it's yourself when you're trialing yourself or other your golfers, the metatarsal heads, the balls of the toes, are your trampolines. They are where you apply force to. We could do a little experiment right now, you and I, if we wanted to. If we tried to jump and I asked you to jump from your heels, and then I asked you to jump from the balls of your feet, you'd create significantly more force through the balls of your feet, and you would jump significantly higher from the balls of your feet. So point of application is critical, and Smart to Move talk about this anyway with their educational program. Place the pedals or the whatever you've got underneath the foot, underneath the balls of the toes, and be pushing them throughout the swing. So backswing, we're getting some down this way. Before top of backswing, try and start pushing down onto the lead one, and then pump that lead one by latest P6 shaft horizontal downswing, and the body then can react through the energy coming back through it.
Why is a pedal? Why do we need a pedal to help us with the awareness when we can just use the ground?
You'd be surprised the golfers that have zero awareness through their feet, even though they've got thousands of sweat glands and proprioceptors.
Yes.
in their feet. Sometimes it could be the shoe itself is absorbing too much of the energy and therefore the feedback. The golfer's not getting it because they're wearing quite thick soles or wearing quite high heel toe drop shoes.
Yeah.
That's a whole new subject. You and I can talk hours about footwear, by the way.
Oh, no, shoes. I took someone out of a high pair of shoes the other day and gave him a pair of Traditions, and I said, go get a pair of FootJoy Traditions, and he stopped having shanks.
Yeah. So footwear's a massive deal. So you've got footwear that's absorbing that energy and therefore feedback getting to the brain. Also just a lack of awareness or possibly even poor strength in the foot and structure or arch. So when you put something under the foot, the proprioceptors are awakened. They're straight away, I know where that is. That's the balls of my feet. I need to push against that. So you're just giving them something. Now, obviously, the large force pedal quite invasive. It's big. So then the mini one is half of the size, right? So you could start with that and make a big influence. Oh my God, really? I'm to that thing? Yes. And then drop it to that so it's very slight. And then possibly use the edge of it so it's the ball of the big toe. So there's a bit more on the inside versus the lateral border of the foot. So point of application, critical, using something for them to feel it and know exactly where that is.
Alrighty. The Net Return Australia segment. Train at home. Long-time supporter myself and a lot of long drivers, which is not me included.
Yeah.
My little 105s aren't really going to get me on the new long drive tour there in Thailand. TN Golf gets 10% off all your net return stuff. Or if you want to organise a consultation, just get in touch with me to help you set up your own home simulator place at home. I've got a magnificent one here. The guys are great. They get on the call and they will help you build it because it's tricky. It takes a lot of time to build it all. You know, Steve would know. I know it takes a long time. Do you use a net, Steve?
I have used a net in different areas of properties that I've lived in the past. So if I'm restricted on space, a net is a necessity and a go-to. And I have it in my carpool out the front, or whether I would use it in a smaller shaped garden. But I think the introduction of nets probably come to the forefront. We saw more of them in COVID when people were in their back gardens. Much safer than using a bed sheet over a washing line or a towel over a back of a chair. Because if you miss the chair, it's not good, especially where the ball could go.
Do you know
foam balls is a good addition to a net, by the way. Foam balls just to be safe.
Do you know my dad once set up a sheet at home? Said, "Hit balls on that, son." I grabbed my 5-wood out, my favourite club. Wind picked up straight through it. We don't know where it landed. I was only about 50, this is 20 odd years ago, but
never to be seen again. Gone into the neighbourhood.
Yeah, carried everything. This is a story we get spoken about in our house a bit every Christmas. Do you have a golf tip right for me that we can train at home around ground forces? So we spoke about the force pedals there. Let's talk about ground force reactions and what can we do at home to help improve this.
Well, firstly, the net is an amazing addition to your kit because you can practice at home, right? So being able to do the drills, what would be my go-to drills? I would using something under your foot so you know where you're applying the force, number one. Two, step drills. Stepping.
Okay.
The reason why I like step drills, so that if I was stepping out, it would be a lateral force backswing effector. Yeah. If I was stepping forwards and into the downswing, it would be to the lead side vertical force effector. So I'm either going to affect my trail foot and the timings, very important, or my lead foot timings. Step right nice and early, make a backswing. Get to halfway back, begin your step, land on your left side, allow the hands to come down. So they would be the timings of it. Right before shaft horizontal, left before top of backswing, so the hands can come down after the force is underneath the left foot.
I love that. Yeah, I agree. Step drills are great. Very underrated, especially to help with people who need help. It's just fantastic. Help moving around, feel that pressure that we spoke about a lot throughout the podcast. We spoke about all that lateral stuff and that rotational stuff, and you can do a lot of it through step work. I agree. That's a fantastic.
And then if to guide someone how to set it up, take normal stance.
Yeah.
And then if you want to then step one of the feet, take a step inwards of the foot. So this would be my trail foot coming in a little bit, maybe an inch. And then I would then step on to that point. And this is where I use the pedals or something to step onto make sure you step onto the same point at least 3-4 times in a row, because you'd be surprised, with nothing on the ground, you'll keep stepping in the wrong place. So it needs to be consistent in where you step to. So then you step and resume normal stance width, step, resume, and then carry on. So that's why I have the pedals, and I stick them on the ground. I'd have them stuck on the mat, and then I'd just be continuously stepping to the right point. So then you are getting precision in application to the ground at the right point and stance width.
Precision to application at the right. That's good, Steve. That's good. I tell you what, that's so true, because I reckon most people overstep when it comes to the step drills, right?
And that's why they go and get it right. They overstep and they step at the wrong time. So they're swing, step, swing, step. No. Step, swing, step, swing. So they need to keep practicing it until they get the step swing rather than the swing step.
Love that. Well, that brings to the end of the Net Return Australia segment. I support those for the podcast team. Golf gets you 10% off. Link down below. It's getting expensive going to drive ranges. Just set up your own one at home. Let's do it. Need some help? Ask me or ask the team at Net Return Australia. Steve, you've been great. I know you got to go. If you do have a second, do you want to tell me where they can find you?
Yeah, so online you find me at SF Golf Perform. Instagram's quite scary screen time these days, how much I spend looking at my screen. So, and then I'm on Facebook as well, Steve Furlonger Golf Performance, or YouTube. The videos are coming thick and fast now, as I've got more time on my hands to produce more content. So Steve Furlonger Golf Performance on YouTube. And education-wise, as you mentioned, I'm fortunate. I'm at a school with a big amphitheatre and indoor bays and a big short game area. So there's a lot coming next year with some of the best short game coaches in the world. I'd like to think that they're going to get some sort of a ground reaction force summit together next year to get some of the best in ground reaction forces teaching it, and creators of it, inventors of it, so the technology together as well. And that's all going to be next year. This year really is just me finding my feet and getting in all the programs and protocols in place at the school. So you just wherever you find me on my channels, you will see that there'll be something about the education next year that'll be coming.
Steve, you're a legend. We better go start doing some coaching, huh? You and I included. All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming on the Golf Coach podcast, mate. You've been great.
Great chance, you, Toby. Thank you for the invitation. It's been my pleasure.